everyone. It's Maria Brito, and I'm super excited to be here. And we will be talking about creativity, success, and entrepreneurship, pivoting a career, and anything that makes your heart sing.
Awesome, Maria. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Really honored and everything that you've done, your whole background and everything that you've accomplished in your life, growing up and everything too. It's been amazing to read about and see. And so I know that this is going to be a very beneficial episode for everybody watching, hearing, and everything. Just to give a quick introduction. Hey guys, my name is Isaac Hernandez. I'm your host for the Open Creators podcast show. And so Maria, just to start off, just give us like a 2 or 3 minute background on who you are and what you do so that people listening know kind of just a little bit before we get started.
All right. Well, I was born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela, and I moved to the United States in the late 90s. I went to Harvard Law School and I graduated in 2000. After that, I moved to New York City and I worked in big law firms for many years, 9 years to be precise. And I was a very miserable attorney. So I decided to quit my career in 2009 to open an art advisory company. And what I do is I build art collections for people, and I am their eyes and ears. And I just go and go around galleries and art fairs around the world, checking new talent or old talents, or making sure that whatever gap is in my client's collection, I can actually fit something else. But I also have a lot of other different parts of my business that are integrated with art. I'm an educator. I developed a program on creativity for artists and business people and entrepreneurs and freelancers, because I believe in the power of the mind, and I believe in the power of people's uniqueness to create value in this world, because I think that each one of us has a very specific skill set that we bring to the table that is informed by our experiences growing up and by the things that we learn. And so I am incredibly interested in mining the concept of creativity, disruption, innovation, change making, and things like that for people to utilize that to be better. And I learned most of what I know about creativity, I learned from working with artists, because in this past 13 years since I quit my job as an attorney, I've had the opportunity to befriend and watch artists super up close. I know how they live. I know how they work. I know how they rest. I know how they think. And so a lot of artists are shy and they have a hard time articulating their creative process or what are the things they do. And I was lucky to be able, and I continue to be very lucky to be so close to them and to take notes about their lives. And on the other hand, I have been able to work with people who are incredibly famous and, hip hop moguls and Oscar winning actors and things like that, that I have also learned from them. And so I feel that I'm in a very special position where I can straddle a lot of different worlds, the world of business, the world of art. And I feel that it's important for me to translate all the knowledge that I have gained in the past few years so that other people can benefit from that too. And so that's why I write, and I write for magazines, and I write my own newsletter every week. And I also consult for companies the CEOs and the executive team who want to be better and get a different perspective and creativity and innovation. So I do a lot of things basically, but they are very much tied together.
Right. And what I really love about it is that it's a tree that you have different things within it, but each one is to help the creative industry, to help the artists, to really, and since the platforms that you've begun and the platforms that you have, you're using them to really speak out about, what it is to really be out there and helping out these artists and keeping the creativity going. So I just want to jump back a little bit to, your originality. You came from Venezuela, you graduated from Harvard. Tell us about that whole journey and everything about, how you got to the point you're at right now and all the resources maybe that you had from that point from coming from Venezuela and graduating from Harvard.
Yeah, that's listen, progress is not linear. And I think that's very important that we understand that when you move forward in life, it doesn't mean it's like an upward trend all the time, or is a straight line, or you have a lot of ups and downs and detours. And yes, I grew up in Venezuela. And for Latino folks that are listening to this, I think it's important to understand the context when you are born and raised in South America back in the 70s and 80s. I am that old. So when I was little, growing up in a very conservative family, Catholic, where there was no option but to be an attorney or a doctor or an engineer, things like that, that my parents perceived it was a dependable career that would make them look good, basically. It was like their own ego trip, unfortunately. And when you're that young, it's hard to separate yourself from your parents, like you're little and you have not embraced fully your identity, but you still take advantage, you take advantage of the things that are around you, but you also listen to what your parents say. So, I personally wanted to be an artist or wanted to be something like a singer or a fashion designer, also the things that had nothing to do with being an attorney. But I was a very good writer, and I read very fast. So as I was, growing up, my parents were like, well, and so, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be an engineer and this and that. And I was like, I have absolutely no desire to see blood. And I am very bad with math, so I can't be an engineer. And by default, I decided that, it was interesting to me, this idea of justice and pursuing a better world and things like that. And so, I graduated college in Venezuela, and I had a desire to leave since I was very young. And I think I already explained to you that I was very different from the rest of the people, and I just didn't understand. In general, the society for me was it was like, I felt that I was from the 20th century, because that wasn't the 20th. I was like in the 20th century, and I felt that they were from the 19th,
Mhm.
And at the same time, the constant sadness of Latin American countries that have been plagued by corruption, crime, lack of opportunities, and things like that. And I think that we all can relate to that story if you have a parent or a relative who has grown up in South America or in Latin America, because Mexico is the same, and that's not South America. Anyway, so the point is, I'm very proud of being Latina, but I didn't like where I was born and what I had around me. So I worked incredibly hard to be able to leave. And so I basically was planning my exit since the beginning. I was like, I have to go. I have to really work really hard and make myself shine through school so that I can go to a good school and, and leave, basically. And so, I applied to different law schools in the United States, and I got accepted into NYU, and I got accepted into Harvard. And, it was a huge transition, basically, because my English wasn't that great back then. It was very good because I got into Harvard, but it wasn't that great.
Mhm.
And I wasn't used to the amount of homework and reading and all the things that I was actually facing when I arrived. And it was such a humongous shock. I mean, it was seriously so difficult for me to adapt and, survive, right? Because I was like, oh my God, I'm already here.
Mhm.
I have to survive. So it was a lot of adjustments. It was, horrendous winter, right? Like, you live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where like it starts from October to March is like 20 degrees Fahrenheit, right? And snowstorms and all those sorts of things. But look, it was a wonderful time. I think Harvard is a dream for anybody, honestly, who ever wanted to be, to go there. I met incredible people from all over the world. But I'm not gonna lie to you, it was freaking hard.
Yeah,
It's
no, yeah.
freaking hard.
What I
And
really love about that story is that you faced your fears. You came from a whole different country, out of the norms of what people expected you to do, and look at what you accomplished. Not a lot of people can say that they do that, and I'm pretty sure it took a lot of guts, a lot of facing your fears, a lot of being uncomfortableness to get to the
I
point where you're in.
was I was uncomfortable, and I was very young. It was 22 or whatever. Um, and I it's almost like when things like that happen to you, you can't really overanalyze them or want to really kind of think about them too much, because if you do, you're never going to make a move, right? And it's like a lot of what I've done in my life is about risk taking and jumping, at what I think my gut tells me. And I think that when you say what resources you had, I think part of the resources that I had was that I really trusted my intuition. And I think that with technology and us getting sort of like, there is so much noise around us all the time that we forget that we have an inner voice too, that is an intuition that guides our steps. So I think that instead of like using my logical brain all the time, and I'm not saying that using logic is a bad thing. On the contrary, I think that the most successful people are able to combine both an intuitive, feeling and a body feeling and a rational mind to make decisions that take them places. So yes, I faced my fears. That it was very difficult. And ultimately I succeeded, and I moved to New York, and I sat for the bar exam, which is one of the most horrendous experiences too, for me at least. Remember, listen,
Yeah.
I'm with art and artists. This was like, I had to do it, but I'm not a person who's, my light is not very, it doesn't shine very, very bright taking a standardized test and things like that, right? So I'm a person of ideas, and so this was difficult, very difficult, but it was all worth it. I always wanted to live in New York City, and here I am. It's been 20 something years that I have been here.
Mhm.
And it's the most amazing city in the world, but it's a tough city too. So it's almost like I've been calling all my life all this, kind of difficult experiences, but at the same time, I feel in my heart, I want a challenge all the time. And this is important for me, because otherwise I feel that life goes by and I don't like the feeling of being stuck. And that's very personal. I don't advocate for people to feel the way I feel or to think the way I think. I actually am very respectful of people's desires and feelings. I'm not necessarily a person who is preaching, and you should do this, and you should, what? I've learned the hard way that, your ideas and your life are not for everybody, right? And
Right.
so you expect to really inspire people or give a little piece of advice to your people who actually resonate and align with your message, but that's not everybody. So I am respectful that if you do not want to be challenged, and if you just don't want to get out of your comfort zone because you don't feel like, that's respectable too. I'm not that way, but I seek challenge. I seek growth. I don't want to be stagnant. I'm always looking for the next big thing for me.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it takes, because you came from all that. And now you were just named last year a visionary from ARTNEWS for the world, to shape the art world. And now you have your own streaming show called The C Files. And not anybody can say that. And so just talk to us a little bit now about your streaming show, The C Files. But not only
Yes.
that, just your whole success story on how you've been able to also write for different publications like Vogue, Huffington Post, New York Times, all these different Forbes. Just talk about all your accomplishments now.
Oh, come on, Isaac. It's like, you're going to make me feel like I'm so narcissist that I should only talk about myself. But yeah, I mean, as I told you before, when I started this business, I was paying close attention to what other art advisors were doing. And I found that they were stern and snobby and boring. And I said to myself, look, the contemporary art world is exciting. The artists are very exciting. The things, artists have this kind of license to say whatever the hell they want. That's the truth, and so it all gets into, it gets protected by First Amendment, by the fact that they're artists. So I was like, okay, look, these guys can get away with so much. It's so much fun. It's interesting. It's a world of pure ideas. Why is everybody so boring and snob? And so that was my first in. And when I realized that people were boring and snob and nothing interesting was happening outside of what the artists were putting out in the world, I saw that as an opportunity to create content. And what was that back then, right? I mean, remember I opened this company in 2009. So that was 13 years ago. I mean, almost in December, it'll be 13 years. And I said, well, part of the reason also why I needed this is because I was a complete outsider. So I needed to validate myself. And one of the ways I found to validate myself was, well, I'm going to blog, I'm going to interview artists, and I'm going to write my impressions of places. And, back then, the blogging platforms were very rudimentary. I decided to go on Blogger because I didn't want to learn how to code. I was too busy trying to figure out the business of art, which was brand new for me. So I went on Blogger and I was just posting, crappy pictures and whatever. And that was the very beginning. So it was trying, basically. It was trying. It was very rudimentary. It was me putting things out there. Right. But with the intent of, promoting on Facebook and Twitter. That was the only thing that existed back then. I mean, MySpace existed, but it was not for that purpose. So I used Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, actually. And I tried to start building a community of people who would pay attention to what I was doing. And it turns out that many of the galleries started paying attention because they said, well, nobody's really writing about art and the artist in a way that is accessible. Because at the time, there were only, those fancy art magazines that nobody understands. It's gibberish and it's very, inauthentic and whatever.
Right. So you wanted to create something more authentic.
Yeah, I wanted to create something authentic, and I wanted to create something accessible and fun. So that, if you were somebody who, you were 20 years old and you were somewhere in the United States and you were reading my blog post, you would understand what I would try to say. And you wouldn't feel that you had to live in New York City or that you had to have like an art degree and a PhD to understand, right? So I wanted to make it fun and accessible. And I did, right? Because also I didn't know how to do it any other way, right? I said, look, I'm going to just write from the heart. And at that time, I enrolled myself in some sort of like entrepreneurial women organization. And I don't know, because it was the beginning of my career. And they told me that there was an opportunity to write an article for Forbes.com. So I went and I wrote this. I mean, that was like, maybe I was a year and a half into my business.
Right.
So I started writing for Forbes.com, some like, informational articles and things like that. But that gave me a lot of momentum because at the time, it was not everybody was writing for Forbes.com. So
that's something I wanted to touch with you too, is like, because at that moment too, everything was still growing and developing, for example, like the .com, the internet, all these different like, blogging things. So keep going with that. But also, I also kind of want you to talk about like how different it is from like that point of like everything being fresh up to like how different it is to nowadays. And like, the technical world today, and like the digital age and all these things like that.
Well, it's very different. And I as I told you, I continued, like, writing has been such a powerful thing for me, because I think it's what has given me not every break, but almost every break. Is given that article I wrote for Forbes, I took it as like, oh, I wrote something for Forbes. So I printed out and whatever. And there was this friend of mine who, and this was just me meeting people in New York. I want to make sure that people understand that when I moved to the States, I didn't know anybody. My parents are from Venezuela. They barely speak English. They don't know anybody here. This was just me hustling, basically, right?
Power of networking and hustling. Yeah, exactly.
Hustling. So when I moved to New York and I worked in law firms, I also didn't know anybody, because when you work in a law firm, you meet your colleagues who are other lawyers, and you meet your clients who are bankers. I worked for law firms that represented banks, and you are self-contained. Like, you have very little time, because when you're a lawyer in New York City, you do work 16 hours a day, literally, and weekends. So I was like, okay, when I quit and I said, F this, I'm going to live my life, I started hustling differently. And so I met someone who's very special and dear to me. And she said, I'm going to introduce you to Gwyneth Paltrow. And I was like, oh, fantastic. I thought she was joking.
Yeah.
And actually, but she did introduce me to Gwyneth Paltrow. And I was very emboldened by my business and my mission and my vision. And I had really, I was breathing my business and what I wanted to do with contemporary art and bring it to everybody. And so I told Gwyneth, when she introduced me, what I wanted to do with my business and what I was doing. And she was very, very intrigued. And she said, well, I launched this company, or no company, it wasn't even a company. I said, I launched this newsletter called Goop, and I send it once a week. And, maybe you and I can do something. And I didn't really know if it was going to pan out, but I sent her a folder to her house with the Forbes.com. I mean, I still using the Forbes.com article and some other cute little things that I had gathered throughout like a year and a half, literally being in the business. And about a month and a half after, I dropped that off with her doorman when she used to live in New York back in the day. And I get a phone call from her. And I never pick up the phone if I don't recognize the number. So
likewise.
She went straight to voicemail, right? And when I was like, oh my God, who's calling? When I heard that voicemail, I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? Because her voice is very recognizable to me, because I mean, it's Gwyneth Paltrow. I watched all her movies growing up. So I was like, oh my God. She was like, hey, Maria, I got the envelope. I got all the things you sent me. I think now we're really ready to do something for Goop. And writing that article for Goop back in 2011 gave me my first big break, because going back to your question, back then, this was a once a week newsletter in a world where celebrities did not have websites and brands and newsletters. And I mean, there were some people, sure, of course, but this kind of lifestyle, consistent, she works a lot with this idea of like demystifying taboos and demystifying sexuality and things like that, right? So that time it was like demystifying the art world. And so that was such a big thing for me, because I got my first monograph through that article. Like, it went to the publisher of my first book, and she came because of that. And a lot of people, tons of people, I mean, the article was so successful that the year after, when Gwyneth turned 40 in 2012, she was on the cover of InStyle magazine, and they asked her, can you please give us the top 10 stories of Goop? And mine was one of those, among hundreds that she had at the time, because it was still a very young business. So I feel incredibly proud of that moment. And it all came from writing and persistence. And I know that some of the people who are listening are going to say, yes, but you were connected. And I say, I build the connections, right? Exactly. Again, I was not connected. I build the connections. And what building connections mean really, really, really is to be in the right place at the right time and to say the right thing. We should never forget that how you approach people is crucial. I get a lot of messages from young artists and, listen, help me, I want to be famous. That's not how you approach people, right? Yeah. I mean, like, you just got to remember that it's all about the other person, right? I mean, like, we get so much more when we are in the business of serving others than when we are actually begging others to serve us, right? I mean,
exactly.
It's all about what is the angle? How do you approach somebody if you want something from someone, right? And so, there is a psychology that goes into that, but if anybody wants to get one tip out of this whole thing is, be very mindful how you approach people and try to do something for them or give them value. And this is actually, I'm telling you, when I was much younger and millennials could not reach out because they did not email people or DM, I used to get like emails and requests from people who were more my age, and they were very polite. But then after that, I think the informality of internet and Instagram and social media, whatever, took away from that level of politeness. Every time I get a super polite email, I answer for sure.
Right.
And when the email makes sense, right? Yeah. And but if it's just, hey, help me, my work is amazing and I want you to please help me, and I'm like, I don't think this is the right ask, man.
Exactly. No, I agree. Yeah. And I agree with that whole thing you just mentioned about like how just the whole technology and digital platforms just switch the way society interacts with each other.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And to go back to what you said, it's not that you got lucky. You literally came in and just, you made the best out of an opportunity that was given to you, and you networked and you made something out of it. And so for a lot of people who would say, hey, you got lucky, you didn't get lucky. You made something happen out of the opportunity you were given.
I did. And I think you make your own luck. Look, I mean, it's sometimes it's difficult to actually try to make sense of what happens in your life, right? Because there are a million things you do not control. And those things, you know, they are, I don't even know, I mean, how to like classify them. If you believe in God, then it might be God. If you believe that there are stronger forces, the universe, whatever, I don't know. I mean, you may not believe in anything, and that's cool too. But what I'm saying is, it's you know, life is it's a game of light vibration and alignment. Mm-hmm. And this sounds woo, and I understand that, but it's also a very unknown dimension, if you will, because we don't really see and we don't have a lot of concrete information or data on how to control our own vibration and thoughts and what we attract to ourselves. What I do know is that the more open and joyous I am about what I'm doing, the easier my life is and the easier things flow to me. The more kind of control freak I feel and the more stressed or anxious I am about the outcome, the harder and the bigger the mountain is, you know, to climb. Right. So I think it's important to highlight that you have to fall into things with a certain amount of ease.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes it's very easy to say, but harder to do. But I would like for people to consider the idea that if you are doing something you absolutely love and it comes to you with, I'm not saying easy, I mean, there is a level of effort in everything that we do, but if you do something and you love doing it and there are challenges along and you're like, no challenge is going to take me away from my vision or my dream, I think you should consider yourself lucky and to know that you are in the right path. If you are all the time complaining and sad or anxious or upset, or you find yourself not feeling like you want to do something, then by all means, please change gears and start living from a different place, because I think that's why I advocate so much for creativity, because creativity is deeply intertwined with purpose, with living a meaningful life, and with expressing your real talents, no matter what you do. If you're an accountant, you can be creative, believe me, not to steal, by the way, not to steal people or cook books, but to, you know, to bring joy to the world in a different way. So I think I believe in those ideas, and I believe in the execution of the ideas of bringing your best gifts to the world around you to serve others. I believe that.
Absolutely. And I feel like this is a perfect time of throwing this question is, you're somebody who became very successful out of what you came from. So what does success mean specifically to you, and specifically how it relates to artists and creatives? What does the term success mean to you?
You know, success has a lot to do with what I say about purpose and meaning. And I think that for the longest time, we've heard the word purpose in the media or in self-help books or whatever. And a lot of people think that purpose is something like you have to be saving children in Africa from getting malaria, or you have to be working in the soup kitchen or whatever. And I don't think that those are bad things at all. I mean, I think that they have a lot of purpose and meaning, but at the end of the day, purpose really is to put yourself out there in the world to do something that is meaningful to you and that brings value to others. And that others could be two people. You also don't have to be Amazon and send, 5,000 million things every day. No, it's not that. It's
Right.
I think for me, success is about stepping into purpose and the power that comes with realizing that you are doing the right thing and that you are bringing the best of you to the world to create something positive, right? And success has a lot of different faces. For some people, success is really to make a lot of money. And I think that's very important too. Money is not a dirty word, and it's not separated from creativity. Right. If you're amazing as a creative, no matter what you do, I think that you should be compensated for that. But I think that if you do not love what you do and you don't feel purpose and meaning in what you do, then the money, no matter how much you make, it might feel always that it's not enough, right? Because the thing is, it's inner work to be able to say, I absolutely love what I do and I feel so excited every day. Look, one definition of success for me was when I used to be an attorney, I cried on Sundays. It was the worst day because I knew that Monday I had to go back to work, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I'm so excited when Monday. I mean, look, I work a lot. I work on weekends, but I am so excited for Mondays always, right? Because I have so much to do and my kids are out, they go back to school, whatever. And I am looking forward to my week. And, I don't do anything with like dread. I'm like, oh, amazing. This is such a great day,
Right.
And so I think that if people can think about that and kind of savor that feeling of, wow, I'm really doing what I love.
Exactly.
Then they can really, they can really use that as energetic momentum, if you will, to get other, more accomplishments.
Right. And I completely agree. Success is what really makes you happy on what you do every single day. Success is happiness is what I relate it to. Yeah. And I want to touch now into your two different programs that you have. Well, you have one that's your upcoming book, the How Creativity Rules the World, and also your Jumpstart program. How does all that tie into everything you just spoke about?
Well, Jumpstart came first, and Jumpstart came to answer the needs of many hundreds of people who had emailed me, texted, DM me, etc. Say, how do you build your career? How do you transition from being a lawyer to being in the art world? What do I need to do something similar? Can you help me out? And so once you get so many requests, you're like, I want to figure out how to bring something to those people, right? So I created an online program, which is my masterclass. Right. And it's inside of it is like 40 videos, between 2 and 5 minutes each, or between 2 and 8, I don't know. And divided in specific modules. So it's very highly organized, and just people love being able to learn at their own pace and understand different concepts. And then once a month, I meet with my group of, students to answer questions. And I think it's part of it was my desire to give back to a community of people who have supported me, but also expand it more and kind of bring to everybody this idea that creativity is the foundation of everything, because it really is. Because what we're talking about here is the power of your ideas and the power of materializing your ideas, no matter what you do. If you're an artist, or if you're a business person, or if you're a dentist, whatever. So I feel that there was something missing in that space, where someone who had real life experience of building a business and at the same time experience watching artists, experience watching very, very important entrepreneurs and business people could mingle those things together.
Right.
So I feel that, you know, the program accomplishes that. And the book, which is coming March 15th, 2022, is called How Creativity Ruled the World. You said it very nicely. It's a combination of all these past years in a much more robust way, because the course is phenomenal. But when you have a book and it's, you know, it's 250 pages, you learn differently, right? I mean, we all know how now that we are on screens all day long, also our ability to retain information has decreased tremendously because we are bombarded with like images and sounds and whatnot. So the book is for those people. I mean, there will be an audiobook too, but the book is for those people who actually like to have the information differently. I want this book, and it's actionable. It's full of action items. At the end of each chapter, there are like exercises and practical calls. And, you know, I'm super excited for people to have it because it's also a reference book. It is all a system. And it's a system that helps people align their minds and their businesses. It has also tons of tools of how people can actually materialize their ideas, because a lot of people are like, oh, I have the idea, but I don't know how to make it a reality. So it has a lot of that to people so that they can actually make their ideas a reality. And it has the final part of the book is about how you put it all together and how people can predict change, because I think that part of being creative is being ahead of the curve, right? So like how Steve Jobs did not invent the phone, but he figured out how to package all these components together in such a seamless and beautiful design.
Aspect of it,
right? And he changed the world, literally. He's one of the very few people who will make history because he changed the business of music, how music is consumed, how musicians are paid, how we consume content, everything, right? So I'm excited for the book, and it's already on Amazon. And if you listen to this, if you pre-order the book and you send a copy of the receipt to book at mariabrito.com, we'll give you free access to my course. So that's a really, really
that's an amazing deal.
It is an amazing deal because the book is $29 or whatever other prices, you know, Kindle and audio and whatever. So if you pre-order it and you send us the receipt to book at mariabrito.com. So the book is Amazon, Barnes and Noble, the independent bookstores, everywhere where books are sold. So I want to give this deal to people, and particularly I'm just telling you, I have not told much people because we haven't made a formal announcement about the book, but I do want to make this easy for people. And also I feel excited about being able to inspire others to follow their calling. Sometimes your calling is like literally staring at you in the eye, and you're so afraid of taking that steps. As you said before, I walked my talk and I was able to feel all the fear and move forward regardless, you know?
Exactly. And be honest with yourself and tell yourself the truth, you know, have a serious conversation with yourself about what type of artist or creative or any type of industry that you're in. And is it exactly what you want to do? And so I also want to tie back into everything that kind of relates to your book and your program. Are those topics and things that have come out of like different maybe mistakes that you learned from, also maybe even sacrifices, critical points that you've gone through that, you know, you pushed through and you got to the point you're at right now because you pushed through those things? Is all those type of things related into the whole course in your book?
Yes, absolutely. You know, failure is a very important part of creativity, and it's a very important part of success. And I think that we live in a society that glorifies perfection and that glorifies just success, right? I mean, this is what we're listening all the time to people who are extremely successful. But what we don't get to see is that those people usually have failed many times. And, you know, we also live in an era of instant gratification. And so the minute, you know, you press a button, you get your box, or, you know, I mean, things are very easy, right? Like in terms of how technology works. And I think that regardless of how technology works or how advanced we are in society, people fail all the time because it's human nature. And also because of what I said before, you do not control most of the variables of how things are going to play out. So I've made many mistakes, and I'm going to tell you that one of the things that I believe have been the most hurtful to me is that throughout the time that you build a business and you sort of like navigate the ins and outs of I mean, being in like a company owner, is that you get to find people who will backstab you and people who will hurt you and this and that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But what is important here to know is that, I mean, you don't want to burn relationships all the time. And that's what I unfortunately did. Like, if anybody would cross my way in a way that I thought it was not right, then I would just like, oh, I will discard that person, right? Or, it's kind of like I wrote this in the book, this line is that while business is not personal, entrepreneurship is, because people who set out to build a company and a business usually have a very close interest to that business, right?
Exactly.
And so I have very close interest in my business because it's my name and because it's small and because it's all about how I see things, right? But the truth is that you're going to get disappointed because humans are not perfect. And unless the offense is so traumatic, you shouldn't be just burning every relationship out in the world, right? I mean, pride and anger and pettiness shouldn't be things that rule a business relationship. So
and that leads to failure too, if those are the things you focus on.
Yeah. So I think that if I could do it all over again, honestly, I would try to not burn relationships with people who, it doesn't really matter if I thought at the time that they were valuable or not valuable to me. I think every human being is valuable. But what I'm saying is that, I should have been able to separate my emotions a little bit. Not completely. I think, I don't want to behave in those ways that women are like, I don't have emotions and whatever. No, I do have a lot of emotions. I'm Latina after all, but I want to make sure, but I want to make sure that what the audience understands out of this is that you've got to be very careful with the fights you pick, because you don't know who and why are going to be able to help you in the future for something, and then you've crossed out that person and it's really late to fix that relationship again. So I think that is something, if I'm hoping to leave people with an idea that's it's very haunting sometimes to me.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, then what would be that piece of valuable advice that you're going to give out, or that somebody's given to you that you want to talk about, that is really going to help somebody? Just that one piece of advice that you want to share.
I think that people should be less afraid of expressing their minds and their ideas as they authentically come. And I think that we have been conditioned to believe that we're going to come up short. And because we are in a country where there is a lot of success and money too, we look around and we tend to compare ourselves with others. And then we say, nah, I'm not going to do that because somebody else and so did it better, or because so-and-so has a bigger Instagram account or a bigger TikTok following or whatever. And I think that what that does really is a disservice in general to society. It's really leaving millions of dollars on the table, because every idea, when it's well thought and refined, I'm not saying just throw things like a spaghetti at the wall. I'm saying there are tons of amazing ideas that come from people and their uniqueness, their immigration stories, or their, or the combination of factors that allow them to be who they are, the education they had, the experiences, if they were soldiers in war, whatever. Listen, the world is vast, and we do have tons and tons and tons of people with phenomenal ideas that have been formed and informed by their experiences. So the fear of of moving forward with those ideas has left a lot of fantastic and phenomenal businesses and artists and whatever in the dark, because we don't get to see them because they are afraid of criticism or failing short of, like, coming up short or failing or whatever. And I just want to really encourage people to come up to the forefront and express those amazing ideas, and or bring that amazing art, or create those inventions, and tell us, and be ready for failure, but knowing that perseverance and determination are more important than anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Just keep going, be determined. I love that. And
Yeah.
Maria, the last question I have for you before I let you go is, compared to where you're at right now, what is something you wish you would have known when you first got started?
I think that you always sort of like underestimate the amount of work that goes into building a company and a brand. And when I was an attorney, I was working, I told you 16 hours a day, sometimes weekends were like 10 hours or whatever. And I thought, well, when I have my business, I'm kind of like not work as hard. The truth is that while I don't have to be working 16 hours in an office, I work, I probably work 14. Okay. I work 14 hours and I probably work 10 hours over the weekend, because even when you have people who help you, and even when you have staff and teams and whatnot, if you do not have an eye and a hand in your business, it's going to suffer, right? And unless you're a serial entrepreneur and you just want to grow a business to sell it, which is an amazing thing to do too, you grow different businesses and you sell them, you have to be very mindful that even when you train people to be there for you, you have to be present all the time. And so if you think that you can have a business to work less than when you are right now, that's a fallacy. That 4-hour work week or whatever, that's not true. That does not exist. It takes, as you know, you're a podcast host and you do a lot of other things, and it just takes an enormous amount of work to do all these things. Producing content, which everybody should be in the business of producing content, because it's the most effective marketing platform that anybody can have, takes good content. It's a lot of work,
right?
So
Yeah.
So putting out good content out in the world takes time and effort and polishing skills, and you've got to edit, you got to do a lot of things. So I think
a lot of time. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that there's no, bottom line is, folks, there's no shortcut to being successful. There's no shortcut to really basking in the glory of, your effort and what you've built, and that, there's no 4-hour work week. I'm sorry for Tim Ferriss, who works a lot more than 4 hours actually. And, be ready. It's a very fun and interesting and challenging moment for people to consider after the pandemic what they want to do with their lives. And I'm excited to see, because the time is ripe for creatives, for entrepreneurs, for people who just want to leave that job they hate. This is the time to bring it. We have to come and emerge out of this as the new society.
Exactly.
Because that has to be the lesson, right?
Right.
And we really had an opportunity to reshape our world, and we're doing it together the best way we can.
Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to ask you too, what was your big inspiration, or who inspired you to be what you are? Was it you? Was it somebody? Who inspired you?
I haven't had a lot of heroes along my way, right? Along my path. I think that I have to say Gwyneth is very inspirational to me, Gwyneth Paltrow, because not only is she so beautiful and generous and a good person, but I feel that she was always challenging herself. It was not enough with being an Oscar-winning actress. She also wanted to have a lifestyle newsletter that then became a huge success as a big media website and media company that it is today. It's not, it's in retail. It's not just a website. It's a company that has physical stores everywhere, products, whatever. So I think she's always inspired me tremendously. And, I love writers. I like, Texan Brené Brown is like incredible. I feel very inspired by what Brené did. Brené built a huge business around speaking, consulting, and books. She sold a tremendous amount of books. And what she's done is really bring this world of data and psychology in the way that she has conducted studies and given meaning and humanity to numbers and just studies and, marking X here, X there. So people like that, or, you may think, well, but those people are super famous. Sure. But ordinary people do amazing things every day, and extraordinary things every day. And so we have that example of Gwyneth, who is Hollywood royalty, and she was born in a house with parents who had a connection to Hollywood. But then we have Brené, who was born in a ranch in Texas. And, she's, I don't know, fourth or fifth generation Texan or whatever, So, but she had something to say that was so important, and the whole thesis around Brené's story and the work she puts out in the world is guilt and shame, right? So we have so much shame about who we are and what, the things that we think the world is going to judge about us and things like that, that we end up just not sharing those gifts with the world. So I think that, I think every question that you've asked and every answer sort of like goes back to the same thing for me. That is like trying to mine from within your real talents and your real gifts and give them to the world so that we can all experience it. We can all read that novel. We can all see that painting. We can all see that business. We can all benefit from the product. Everything that you have in your mind is millions of dollars in ideas and beauty and interesting things. And we all want to see them. We all want to see them.
Absolutely. And Maria, I don't want to keep you much longer. We hit an hour, but I mean, this conversation was just too good. I wish we could just keep going and talking. Eventually, maybe down the line we will. But is there any last things that you want to mention? Any last things you want to talk about before I let you go?
Guys, just come hang out with me at mariabrito.com. mariabrito.com, BRITO.com. Buy the book, How Creativity Rules the World.
The book, especially the book. And what comes with it too. Yeah.
Yes, please. And in the meantime, I write a newsletter called The Groove that comes out every Tuesday. It's right on mariabrito.com. You can sign up. It's free. I don't charge for newsletters. It's really fun. So it's a pleasure being with you, Isaac. I appreciate El Paso. I appreciate your audience. I send hugs and kisses and, abrazos to everybody who's listening.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to El Paso or anything like that?
No, but I would love to go. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting community, and there's no culture like El Paso. Like, especially like me growing up here, it's always been like, once you leave El Paso and you come back, nothing ever feels the same as home. And I'm pretty sure you feel like that way too, or for your home. So yeah. Definitely.
Well, you're making me want to go to El Paso. So
you should one day. Well, thank you so much, Maria. I appreciate it so much for coming on to the show and taking the time out of your day to be on here. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Isaac.
All right. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.